Known for its desert modernism aesthetic, Palm Springs, California has distinctive architecture, art around every corner, fabulous shops, and a laid-back retro vibe. And we're going to cover the full range of possibilities on this episode of Ms. World Travel. Hi friends, I'm Ms. World Traveler Kerry Damiano, and I'm taking you on an adventure to discover style, design, fashion, art, and antiques in great shopping destinations across the country and around the world. Come with me. Legendary architecture and lavish retreats for Hollywood stars who wanted to escape the hectic celebrity lifestyle made Palm Springs a desert destination of gracious living. When the movie stars moved in the 1950s and 60s, glamour and eccentricity came with them, and the town became an oasis for the rich and famous, changing its landscape dramatically. Houses designed for them led the way for a mid-century modern architectural takeover. From 1945 to 1969, mid-century modern architecture flourished across the U.S., but no more so than in Palm Springs. The largest collection of this distinctive style, featuring clean lines, wide and/or low footprints, changes in elevation, floor-to-ceiling windows, and large open spaces, can be found here. While the term used to be descriptive only of a building style, it now also encompasses a decorating style. And you'll find a broad array of mid-century modern accessories, home goods, furniture, art, and kitchen gadgets at antique galleries. So we are here at Antique Galleries of Palm Springs, and I'm with Mike Rivkin, the owner here, and he is going to give us a little bit of a lesson on mid-century modern.
And I'm happy to do it. Thanks for having me this afternoon.
You're welcome.
Briefly, mid-century modern began at the end of World War II, and a lot of people don't realize that it grew out of the innovations that took place during the war. Things like fiberglass and plywood and nylons and things like that, all as a result of war manufacturing necessities, created the opportunity for designers to use some of these new materials following the war. And of course, many the swells at the time, Hollywood and elsewhere in Los Angeles, were looking for a place to go after the war so they could relax and enjoy the fruits of their labors. And Palm Springs was a logical place. They were looking at the best designers to see what sort of fashion-forward trends were worth taking advantage of. And in large measure, that really evolved into what today is the center of the universe for mid-century, which is Palm Springs, and the whole mid-century movement in general. The colored glass behind us is very representative of the kind of accent pieces that mid-century modern evokes. And we see it very commonly here throughout the desert. It's just a staple of mid-century design and continues to be so, and has been really for many years now.
Mm-hmm. Well, these colors seem to be very particular to that era of time. So why is that?
Well, I'd say in particular, the desert, of course, being a warm climate, blues and some of what you might think as cooler colors tend not to sell as well here. People are warm, they're coming out here to be warm, and by and large what they want are warm colors, whites and yellows and light greens. They're less interested in colors that remind them of home, snow,
right.
Dark winters.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and that's the reason.
Uh-huh. Well, this is really so beautiful. Are there any particular pieces or shapes you think that are really indicative of that time frame?
I would say so. Prior to World War II, oftentimes the shapes that most people looked for were softer, more insulated, more puffy, but I think things became more angular with the advent of mid-century modern. And so, to some extent, the glass pieces that you see behind us are sort of counterpoints to that. You see mostly rounded shapes, not a lot of sharp edges, not a lot of things that would otherwise be described as sort of angular or pointy. And again, that simply reflects the fact that those tend to be accent pieces in what otherwise is a very angular environment, and that's the nature of mid-century design.
So, Mike, we've been talking about mid-century modern, and these sofas are almost straight out of the 70s. Is that what they're from?
I'd say that's a good bet. Those kinds of loud prints, of course, and that was the end of the hippie area, a time when tie-dye was big and prints were something that people looked forward to covering their homes with. The sofas that you'll see shortly are very much in keeping with all that, and of course the challenge is to match pieces like that are so strongly colorful with the rest of your decor to make it work. And when it does work, it's quite something, and when it doesn't work, it tends to be...
It's quite something.
It's quite something. That's exactly right. That's a good way to put it.
You were mentioning design ingenuity to be able to make this work with a lot of other pieces.
Yes, that's really the best way I can describe it, because a piece like that is not easy to match with.
Right.
And it precludes a whole lot of other things you might otherwise like to add to your decor. If you're going to go in with pieces like that for the center of your room, then you're obligated to sort of keeping with that theme.
You're obligated. That's it.
That's right.
That's your look.
You're on the road. Yes.
Unusual piece, Mike. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Well, pieces like this kind of have an unusual place in the mid-century design aesthetic. This piece actually started life as some sort of a manufacturing plate in which the factory cut out whatever parts they were needed to complete what they were making. Our vendor purchases the plates completely unvarnished, uncolored, and then he powder coats them, adds his little design trim, and then offers it, as you see here, as wall art. But it's distinctive and different, could be almost anything you would imagine it to be. The colors are very much in keeping with mid-century, and the style again combines mid-century coloring with an industrial look, and it creates for a very unique piece.
We were talking earlier about mid-century glass, but this looks kind of different from that. A little bit more ornamentation on it. So what's the difference?
Well, this is utilitarian glass as opposed to purely decorative glass. And the gold that you see on many of these pieces here reflect the fact that in the 50s and 60s, that was a common theme to almost all barware that you'd see in any home that had a mid-century theme. It's still the case today. It's enormously popular here in the desert and elsewhere where mid-century is the predominant design aesthetic. And this particular vendor does really a wonderful job in matching barware pieces, creating the kinds of combinations that are so distinctive and so mid-century. And he has a dazzling array and sells a lot of them. And of course, you and I would remember these. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that our parents had. And bars, I think, as sort of a central part of home entertainment were a big deal back then, less so today.
Right.
But barware like this was an almost...
And beautiful barware that you could kind of show off to your friends, right?
No, this was not inexpensive then, and it's not inexpensive now. But it's just the kind of thing that people remember from the 50s and 60s, and it still dominates today.
This is your room. You are the vendor in here. This is your stuff, which we're very excited to see. It's a nautical room, right? But you have some really cool special pieces.
We do.
Yeah, you want to tell me about one?
We describe this room sort of as manland. It's guy stuff, but girl stuff too. We have a little bit of everything in here, but what we particularly try to show in here are unique high-end items that you can't see anywhere else. A good example is right behind you. A pair of ventriloquist dummies, not the kind of inexpensive dummies you might buy in your local department store, but those were actually working dummies from the 30s and 40s. We have full costumes, assorted costumes for each one, and all the moving parts you'd expect to see in a professional, that's right.
Their eyes work, the mouths work,
go up and
everything
down,
works.
the neck swivels,
yes.
Exactly right. So they're professional show dummies. So those you don't see very often, and those were built for very specific purposes, and we have several to choose from.
So, are you a ventriloquist? Can you work them yourself?
Nothing of the sort, unfortunately. No talent in that regard at all.
So, who would buy something like that? Would it be somebody who's like a ventriloquist wants to start them, or just a collector?
I would say both, but primarily collectors. There are, surprisingly, collectors of almost everything, including ventriloquist dummies. But by and large, people who are looking for unusual accent pieces in a man cave, in an office, something that, again, their peers wouldn't think to have, they'll likely find it in here.
Thank you so much for having us into Antique Galleries. This has been so much fun, and you've been so knowledgeable and given us great sound bites. So anyway, you might think that I am worn out from all the treasure hunting over 2 floors, but no, we have more coming up from Palm Springs on the next segment of Ms. World Traveler. See you then.